Hi there, let us continue our new understanding of a new way of living that I have alluded to so many times. But here in this little series of podcasts, I'm going to put it all together so it creates its own pattern and not just being what we call a side effect of the other patterns or frames of references that we have created. Remember, we are creating patterns of change. If you want to change your life, you need to change your mind patterns and your emotional patterns. It is as simple as that. These are also called schemata, as you know. And we move this or use this, we use this or the body uses this to navigate in reality. So when you have a child that kind of comes to life, inside this reality, and it does have what we call the karmic imprint, and it already has the it already has the patterns, let's call them the vague patterns, replicates of the parents' patterns. Sorry about that. Again, my brain needs to get into my physical form. So this is a little bit of the hiccups you are having here. My body getting used to the high energies and my mind getting ready for the higher level information patterns. It will get better. But the startup is always like warming up, doing exercise, right? We have to get things in gear and get it moving. So hence a little bit of rusty voice and a little bit of unsorted thought patterns, but they're there. They just need to get in and latch on to my neural network. And then my body will be infused with this, and then we will smoothly move into what I want to say. And I know it's annoying, but it's like that all the time when we begin this, especially when I'm working during daytime. If I did it during nighttime, it would be easier. But then the energies at night is not suitable for me sharing what we should do during daytime, is it? So things have to be as they are. I know this could be annoying to listen to, but bear with me. It will vanish. It will only be in the startup as my voice get oiled and I clear out the distortion from nighttime, which you should do as well when you wake up. We have talked about this many times. I'll say it here again. You must arrange your life in a way so that you have the time when you wake up to clear out the patterns of nighttime and where you have been. And this is part of me getting into my own body. I could sit and wait for hours for it to come back, but I have to utilize it inside this body. And there is a point there that's important, and that goes with use it or lose it. And that's part of the new way of living. If we don't use the higher order abilities as well as the higher order neural network in density energy in our everyday life, it will not become part of our energy system. It will just be a possibility, but possibilities to become something that is there as a pattern must be utilized. So we can't just sit in meditation and pretend that 2 hours a day we are in the other dimensions, and then the rest of the day we are inside the base program. That will not get you out of here. You have to be everything through and through. So that means when we are talking about new way of living, how do you arrange yourselves? And you say, well, then I have to isolate myself on an island. Well, that's not arranging yourself living with what we could say the other worldly energies inside the enclosure. Not at all. You have to be living in the enclosure, exercising both physically, emotionally, mentally, and energetically, the other worldly energies, the psychic energetic connection and the double awareness. You remember from my older material, I talked about the double awareness. You have to be both functional within the neural frequency network as well as in the neural density network at the same time. That's the vertical opposition or a polarity that you are working with, where you see everything with the add-ons of the higher awareness. So that's the first step. And when we talk about arrange yourself in a way that you can do this in the morning, I know some of you you are on a clock and you have to get up, and when the clock rings, you have to get up and out and do whatever. And some of you will put the clock back and you will get up an hour earlier, but you still have the stress of you knowing that you need to get to work or something. And that stress will amplify the amygdala and the adrenal glands and the peripheral nervous system, and it will not allow you to go into this deep relaxed state where you can work with what has happened during nighttime. Because when you sleep, you are in the deepest state of theta, and you are technically, or the energy system is technically pulled somewhere else, and the whole getting it back in is done via your clearing work and taking it back. So for me, this whole thing of going to work, if I had to go to work in the base program, that would be a complete sacrifice of everything that I have built. I would know that it would cease to exist. It would take a month, perhaps 2 months, but then it would be gone. And then I would align with whatever I had become part of, because I'm now so deep into the law of participation, so that if I do choose to go out in the base program, my energy system would think, well, that's a new way of living. That's a new reality field to be discovered and work with. And hence, therefore, we will adjust to that one. All of the little energy units will think we will adjust to that one, and then they will become aligned with the enclosure programs and everything that's there. And no matter how much I cleared it out, I wouldn't be able to get out of it, because I would walk right out into it every day, amplifying, renewing it, and reseeding the technology and the energy configuration. So that's the first choice of the new way of living, is that whatever we're doing in a period of time, we can phase out our everyday life. And that's how it's supposed to be done. I've done it over 10 years, so I had good time. Many of you might not have that amount of time. So you need to think quickly, how can you do this, and how can you arrange yourselves with the skill sets that you have? And that's some of the things that when you do a session advice, a support session with me, we can talk about this and we can look at it together. How can you utilize this? What twists and turns can you take with the educations you have, with the earlier experiences you have within the work market? Remember, because I used to be a recruiter and I used to work in a temp office where we were hiring people for certain vacancies, as well as doing headhunting. And I was part of that company for 3 years or so. So I have that skill set. I was the one talking to people and was listening. I was the interviewer, listening to what they had of skill sets. And then I would talk to the business partners that would like the new coworker and figure out what they wanted. And then I would match up. So this is, I know how it works, but this now is just when we talk about the extra systemic levels of the reality, where we're then talking about a completely different boss, right? How would you like to work in a company that's led by Mantit XYZ QP that has the functionality of doing this and that and whatever, because they don't have names. They have rank, they have purpose, they have function. So they are known by that. And sometimes when we hear something that sounds like a name, it is actually their function or their rank. Similar as if you call someone a worker, a breeder, or a general, or a colonel, or whatever. So that's their name. And since they don't have many that has the same type of work, then it's no problem, because when you live in a holographic world, you only need one that is doing that, because that one person, whatever is a humanoid or whatever it is, will cover all of the similar networks where that is supposed to unfold. So therefore, by the expansion of the perception field, all bases can be covered. All patterns that are working within that functionality can be covered by the extension of our perception field. And I'm doing the same thing as I have moved from being a releaser and into being a technological retriever, which means I am accessing the humanoid technology, and then by that, taking it out of the non-functionality of it. that has been tied into the original construction as an attempt to allow the humanoids to operate inside our reality. These are the last anchor points. First, the organic forms, the racial networks, and then the holographic networks, energetically speaking, and then the technology, and that's the last thing. So hence the retriever. And the retriever is not pointed at retrieving humanoid technology, but pointing at releasing, dismantling the otherworldly technology so that the original technology can be retrieved and returned to the progressive worlds. So that's the next step. That's my 5th cycle work technically. So you will also hear me get more and more technological and more scientific while I'm doing that. While as I worked as a releaser, it was the time to make the progression work, because there I understood all of the traps and all of the issues with the progression work and why the other races had not been able to do so. That's been my line of work for the last 7 years, where I've been listening to all of the different races, why it has not been possible for them to do this and that and whatever. All of these good excuses, including humans, listening to all of their whys and I can't do this and that and whatever. And by that has been patiently listening to all of that to figure out, okay, what are the obstacles here? And then understood the energetic parasites, the technologies, the programs, and everything that follows with that. So everything that kind of comes up as a blockage is an option or a possibility for investigation of something that is behind that. And that's, again, one of the changemaker skill sets, that you don't take anything for granted, you don't take anything for face value, and you don't settle with stupid excuses. Simple as that. And you always understand that when we're talking about inside enclosure, things are never what they appear to be, because it's a holographic overlay, it's a program, it's not a real world. So the only thing that makes it real is because you're part of it. And as long as you're part of something, it will feel real, because then you vibrate in the same resonance system as the reality field you're part of. You are oscillating along with the programs. So therefore, the programs become tangible and real. So the first step of the double awareness is, of course, to understand you have to have double awareness. Secondly, that you have to choose which world do you want to be part of. Do you want to be part of the illusion, or do you want to be part of the real world? Well, knowing that getting to the real world goes through layers and layers and layers of distortion, artificial technology, alien inserted technology, hostile programs, prohibiting technology, energetic parasites, yada, yada, yada. So it's a long journey where you have to have a big backpack and be ready to walk the path alone with only your staff and your lantern. And all you have to trust is yourself and your own perception of what you're seeing. And you will learn eventually that what you're seeing, hence the lantern, is not clear. It would be nicer if you had a full blast laser light or something so you could see everything. But all light has its limitation to whatever tool that you are shining around yourself with. And the only thing that can really light things up to the true extension of what is needed to be seen is your energy system. And that's your light body. So you need to recreate your light body to be able to see things as they truly are. As long as you are living inside the enclosure, you're walking in darkness, you only have your staff, you can only see 2 steps ahead on the trail. And the only reason why you can see so little is because the lantern or the tool of light that you have got is not far ranging. It is limited within a specific spectrum. And if the light goes out, you have nothing, you will wander in darkness, and you will have to feel your way through until you get through the gate system out of the enclosure, and there you'll begin to see things again with that's the astral plane. It is light, but it is artificial light, and it's distorted light. So there you have to walk your way through. Now you're seeing things, but you are seeing things in a distorted way, and that's the way you have the staff, because the staff is fire, and fire always clears out all distortions and transform it, which is the symbol of the staff. So the lantern is out of the base program, where you need knowledge or information about this. That's what's symbolized in the lantern. And then you go into the astral plane, where you have the staff. There you don't need the lantern, because everything is light, but it's artificial or overlay or a false light, if you like. It's astral, it's distortion. You will see things that are not really there. So you use the staff of fire to shine your way through, burn your way through, transform your way through. And as you then go into the mental level of your journey, you will discover that you will then, instead of the lantern, you will then have a sword in your left hand. And with that, you begin to cut all of the old patterns down. So this is what I've symbolized for you in becoming a change maker, the chaos pilot, that's through the astral plane, and then the path cutter in the mental field where you learn to work with your skill sets. And then when you have done all 3 layers of the base program, then you have reached the Valley of the Dead, and you will there use your tools as no longer tools in your hands, but they will become part of your energy system and a code system in your energy system. So whatever you will encounter, your field will then have the codes of the lantern of knowledge. It will have the codes of the staff of transformation, and it will have the codes of the sword as cutting loose what is no longer of use. And that will be imprinted into your energy system. So whatever tries to enter will meet these 3 criteria of your energy system. And that's why you begin to have what we call true energetic power. After the Valley of the Dead, where you're dealing with all the shells that will be either transformed or shun away or away from the light, or they will be cut to pieces by the sword of knowledge, then you are, or discernment, then you are ready to go into where you technically meet the doors. I'm talking here in the old secret societies. Then you meet the doors of the Crystal City, where you have to prove that you are worthy of entering the Crystal City, where you'll begin to regain your original capacities. And the Crystal City is where you go through the maze of where you will take your initiations. This is something that's always been said. This is the path. But learning and hearing about it does not really tell us what that is. So how is it and what is it? Well, this is the interesting thing about the base program, because as long as you're in it and you're living everyday life and on the prohibiting technologies, you will see it as a real world, as most people do. But once you begin to go with the staff and the lantern, you go on the path, which is something you put your foot on, and then everything will turn dark around you. Everything will become, I don't know where to go. You will feel uncertainty. You will feel doubt. You will have a lot of emotional upheaval, and you will meet things in outer reality as well as inner reality you don't know what to do about. And that's the first step of the path, where you learn to use your lantern to see things as they truly are and deal with it accordingly, and finding out, okay, this is something that keeps coming across my path, but I keep walking by making the choices that does not get me entangled with all of the false appearances that are coming into my field. We use the same knowledge in the path on the astral plane, but there you are transforming it. Instead of just shying it away and turning the other cheek, you are then transforming it directly by using the staff that you have in your right hand. So that's where you really begin to work with visual content, where you could say the lantern is in the left hand. So that's the lesser knowledge via the lantern. But the true knowledge comes with the sword in the left hand, once you have succeeded your way through the distortion fields of the astral plane. And all of that is the path of double perception. When you're out in the real world, so to speak, quote unquote, whatever comes your way, once you have set your foot on the path and you decided you want to go there, then humans stop being humans, plants stop being plants, animals stop being animals, insects stop being insects. Reality stops being reality. Houses are no longer houses. Your space is no longer your space. Your body is no longer just a body. Everything becomes an energy system. Everything becomes a program. Everything becomes something that is an overlay that's artificially made for a purpose. Everything suddenly has a different purpose than what you thought inside the base program. Everything has some kind of energetic connection point into the holographic network where it plays a role. Of course, you could say, well, a table, does that have a role? Well, technically it does. My IKEA tables, they come from IKEA. IKEA are run by factions that are working with what we call the mafia version of the scavengers. So if you buy their items, you're technically buying what has been produced by them, and by that they can have access to your home. So you must be ready to deal with the scavengers and have that understanding that when you buy it, fortunately for me, I did it when the Old World Order program was still up. And there you could do this 1-for-1. I'm paying you the amount of money and I'm getting the item. And then you're no longer permitted to access my home and take more than the 1-to-1 exchange rate. That was some of the things we could do under the Old World Order if we had the ability to go into the fourth and had the confrontation with that group of scavengers and were not spooked. So they understood, okay, when she's coming here as a fearful warrior that has slayed her way through the Draco system. She has that as a configuration. She has the sword in her left hand, and she has the strength of the receiver in the right hand, and therefore they knew, okay, we're good with your money. We know we are not to intimidate you further because you're not one of the little ones we can shovel around as we please. And that's the problem with the 60% clones inside our reality. They're accustomed to that. The 40% that are there, the 10% are us that are in enslavement. Then we have 10% of the enhanced humans, 10% of the humanoids, and 10% of the hybrid races or whatever. And they have their own rule sets. The enhanced humans have clones inside this reality. They would never ever set their foot here, but they're in control of their clones. So that's the marionette doll that they have inside, the little Pinocchio sort of doll they have inside this reality, where they're orchestrating it via what we call holographic overlay or imprinting or recalibration during nighttime to give them upgrades, and literally like you would with a bio android. That's what they are. Completely operational, and also made to not feedback loop complex information systems from the base program to their enhanced human original vessel outside the enclosure, which is an adjacent reality that exists here. And at the same time, they're using their clones linked up to a different type of the internet, a different type of the reality programs, which is why when we look at the enhanced humans insertions that are here, they're operating completely different, similarly as the Men in Black were able to operate during the 50s and 60s inside our reality. Not doing that anymore, though. But this is part of that understanding. And it's not possible if you think of the world out there as a true world. But if you begin to think about not as virtual reality, because that's inaccurate, but begin to think about it as a complex information system, holographic information system that is capable of changing all depending on what kind of symbols that are put into the network, that amplifies and oscillates the energy units in a specific way, then you begin to understand, okay, this is not the movie The Matrix, but play along with that idea if you like, although that the movie The Matrix, then it was a completely virtual reality. And that's not what this is. That's used in the artificial timelines, yes, but it's still more advanced than that. They still need viable genetics and not just someone dreaming or being linked up to a program and then only have the neural network connected to the program, as we're seeing in the movie The Matrix. So therefore, it's inaccurate as well. But how do you depict these advanced technologies when you barely have the sciences for it yet, right? So, but the analogy stands, we kind of get it. It was made there for a reason, but it was of course made by the transhuman agenda to get people to look at algorithms and binary codes and thinking that we were in a virtual reality. And then that was seeded into science and was seeded into different, of the lineages. That's the early priesthood that are now become our scientists, the architects of our world, again, often males, because they are the descendants of the priestly lineages that were having inserted alien DNA and were working as the extended version of the aliens that had two interacting principles inside this reality. They had the bloodlines, which were the nobilities and the one in power, and they had the lineages that they had conformed and changed into their version, and they were part of what we call the priesthoods, and later on have become the sciences. Because what does a priest do? A priest defines the reality of heaven and earth and what is in between, and how it's linked up to the creators, and scientists are doing that all now, is calling it the Big Bang, and now they're defining the quantum layers and the reality, and they're telling us that this is possible and this is not possible. They are the new priesthood. Okay, and the new bloodlines are the business people, and the enhanced humans are in between. They are the group that has grown out of this and then discovered we don't need to be inside the enclosure anymore, so we'll just leave clones there, and then we'll put ourselves outside while we're working in the true energies of reality so that we can get going when the time is ripe, because that is what is going on, and we should learn to do the same thing. So there are these different steps of perception when we begin this new way of living. And I have talked about it before, but as I said, we're now building that specific pattern where we understand as a first step, when we wake up in the morning into this physical form, we understand this physical form is an engineered vessel for the purpose of existing inside the enclosure. And we understand the enclosure is an artificial made program. You understand the background of it because I explained it in the perception logs. All 6 of them, some of you have not done all of them yet, all 6 of them, and then the transition science course material. So you need to do the transition science course material, all 7 courses, and you need to do the perception logs, all 6 of them, to get the full picture of the reality you're part of. Okay, so that's the historical background and why the energy system was engineered as it was. And then the tampering and the hijacking and the new type of body that was seeded in 12,000 years ago. But this body is still built upon the original principles of the original outer domain vessel, although heavily downsized and heavily controlled. But we recall and understand that if we do get our energy system up and running on the original configuration that follows with the restoration program, the body that holds the remaining nodal points in its holographic network will then begin to activate naturally, which is why they have created this artificial program and upholding it with 60% clones that cannot activate, and by that are keeping it locked into that configuration of the base program as a control system that is controlled by alien technology, upheld by the maintainer grace, and are linked up to prohibited technologies and all sorts of restraints that prohibits all of us from activating. And now the latest addition with the energetic parasites. But the energetic parasites have come because of the high level of insectoids that are now merging with the clones and are taking over the clones, so that our reality field are now being contaminated with insectoid genetics, which ripples into our physicality as well, because the clone body and our bodies are made of the same material. So that means that if you're out there on everyday life and you're around other people, quote unquote, in whatever situation you're in, you will align with their configuration. And if they're insectoid, you will get a lot of insectoid code systems coming your way, which will adapt you to be more in alignment with the insectoids. And by that, they will get access to you, which they have, as they have chewed their way into health industry, into food industry, and into vegan industry, and into spiritual teaching systems industry, and all of these things only there to kind of lose grip of it. And it has been changed into more and more aligning with what we call not so much health and wellness industry anymore, right? It has become a lot of pills that are made of some kind of suspicious powder, a lot of oils that we don't really know what's in, of nanotechnology, etc., that people do this and you will get healthy. Do this machine and you will get the right brain configuration. Do this sound and you will get the right chakra system configuration. All run by technology, pills, artificial means, again, linking up to the grace. Of course, think about it. At least I know many of you are in the younger generation. You cannot recall the spiritual teaching systems of the 80s, but that was the health industry back then was definitely something else than it is today. I've seen how it changed. I've seen how the configurations have changed. And for me, I don't need to buy something specifically from some specific company calling itself biodynamic something, because I get the insectoids all over it. So I know, yeah, that's just for the stupid ones. Plus, sorry to say so, but the base program, due to the chemtrailing and the pollution and everything, nothing is clean energetically anymore. Really, it isn't. So of course I still do that just for the sake of the principle of it. and do it as locally as possible. And I don't do the big health and wellness companies. I do the smaller ones, I do the local ones, I do the ones under Danish legislation, because I know at least they are following the laws of the country I'm living in. So thereby the configuration should be as my body actually is, because I'm living in this country. And the reason why I'm saying that, and I'm here going to put in another little piece of information. Many of you feel home where you are. I never felt at home, not here in Denmark. I always kind of looked out the window, always thinking, not with this great brilliant mind I have today, but within the child's mind, thinking, what am I doing here? And not thinking it to an end, and thought, well, it's just because my parents are not, or it's because I'm being bullied at school. But foundationally, I don't feel at home here. I'm not in alignment with the earth configuration or the local configuration of Denmark. I'm aligned with the British configuration. I also had an alignment with when I went to Israel. There I had, for the first time in my life, when I was 18, when I stepped out of the plane, for the first time in my life when I came out, I had this rush, welcome home, and I felt at home. And I actually felt like throwing myself to the ground and kissing the earth, because it was like, wow, this is how it feels to come back home. Because I was seated in the times of, you know what I'm talking about, but that's not where we want to go. But that's the Mesopotamian network, the Egyptian Mesopotamian network of the fourth seeding that is still strong down there. So at least it used to be. But that's how I felt it. Hence also all of the wars and all the stuff that's going on. So it is folding. It's no longer kind of, do I want to move to Israel today? Oh, no, thank you. I'm good. I'm good. So that's all been changed. But I was lucky enough when I was 18 to get there in some around 1988. Whew, that's a long time ago. So, and I had that profound feeling of coming home. And I'm telling you, when I just kind of, oh, that would be so nice if I could feel it here in Denmark. I never feel at home here. I'm always a stranger. I'm a stranger in a strange land, and I'm always disconnected from it. So no matter where I go, I'm not seeding anything in. Even though when I'm out greeting, I'm not using the reality settings of Denmark. I'm trying to connect to the British, actually, the original holographic network that used to be part Denmark and Britain used to be connected before or during, both before and during the Ice Age. But then when the ice melted, water came in between. So we're technically of the same landmass, but it has changed due to the water, and water has eroded and between the islands, so to speak. So we are no longer per se connected on what we call this reality setting, but on a deeper level we are, as in the previous fourth seeding cycle. Before the Ice Age, we were. So that's going again back in time, so to speak, in using the local gridworks to be able to do so. And when I remember when I went to England when I was 16, I could navigate there. It was like I knew where the streets were. I knew where to go. I could find north, east, south, and west, which here in Denmark has always, I've learned it now by the years and by traveling and walking and looking how things are. But it doesn't feel like, you know, the birds are instinctually knowing what's up and down and how they're moving around in space due to their neural network that links up to the holographic network of the air, which is why they can fly also, because they're using these highways. They are configured in a different way. They're avians, right? So where we're earthbound, so to speak, by a more dense configuration of our physical form, and by that are linked to the denser configurations of our reality program, which keeps us stuck to the ground. Whereas if we were birds, we would have the avian, more subtle configuration, and we would be able to fly. So with that understanding, also saying, okay, so our navigational system, sorry about that, similar as the birds, they are connected to a lighter version of the holographic network of our program. So instead of looking at it as a reality and thinking that the birds can fly because they're so light, because they're actually nothing but feathers, and they're using a what we call hydrodynamics, or not hydro, aerodynamics of some sort that can allow them to fly up there. And science has got a lot of good explanations, of which when I look at them, I kind of say, yeah, you don't understand what's going on. You're just using a lot of words. And then you say, we have a theory about it. We have a theory about it, right? But it is, they are living in what we could say the higher layers of reality, which is also when they're down on the ground, they have to walk like the rest of us. But when they lift off, you could say they are using that the lightness of their body is good to have when they are lifting off. They don't need so much propulsion to get out of the more dense levels of our reality. And then they can get into the next layer that are in the top of the trees. The trees are actually part of creating that lighter band of energy. And with us cutting off all of the trees, we're then saying it's this demolishing our atmosphere, and they are no longer transforming carbon dioxide. And that is true. So we are literally industrializing all of the layers of our atmosphere by cutting away the trees and making the air more dense as well, which is why we need to use more and more gasoline to take off and get up in the air. Whereas if you look 100 years ago, you had all of these small crafts. You even kind of had people that could run and then get the aerial uplift. I forgot what it's called. There is a specific word for it, a very technical specific word, where you get the air under the wings that will then lift you up. That was easier before the industrialization, but now it has become more and more difficult, and the machines need to get bigger and bigger, and they need to use more and more oil, etc., or gasoline to get up in the air, and more momentum, as with the rockets. So that's part of us demolishing the reality field around us inside the enclosure, making it more and more dense. So we are, by our use of machines, turning it into a machine world, because the machine worlds, they lose the electrons, they lose the protons, and then all what's left with are the neutrons, and that's the quantum field. And that's where we're heading with all the quantum sciences. So we are heading that direction as well. And to be able to see these shifts only comes if you're not looking at this world, as a planet, as what you have been brainwashed to believe, but actually look at it as a very complex set of holographic information systems and holographic networks that are working together with different types of energy fields and layers and code systems that allows different things to unfold in what we could call, in each layer. The codes that unfolds into that layer will have a correlating physical form that is in alignment with that layer, such as the things underneath our feet in the soil. They look in a specific way, similar to the soil. We are having this what we say 2-meter band where humans exist. We are stretching up into the skies, which is also why the birds are dying now, because we are literally taking away their network where they can fly and live and thrive. And it's not just because of the climate changes. That is, of course, part of it, but the climate changes is just as much because we are destroying the avian layer with our human energies. So therefore, the avian layers has now become human and are then falling prey to our distortion energies, hence the weather disruption. We are also contaminating the even higher layer in the ionosphere with all of our machines, hence the technocratic worlds that have been making us do that, and our rockets and our satellites that we are constantly throwing up into outer space and discharging all sorts of things in the upper atmosphere. They're so full of scrap up there that we have destroyed that layer as well, including satellites and GPS and what have you, including internet, broadband, wires at the bottom of our ocean. So we are stretching as far down as we can on our planet, quote unquote, our reality setting that are equal to our physical energies, to the bottom of the sea and to the top of our ionosphere. And then are we conquering, quote unquote, all of that with our technology and our pollution and our energetic parasites and all the shit. So that's why we are destroying our world. And if we don't change that, then it's just, well, let's put it this way. Well, no, it is going to go bad. So that's the wrong way to say, if you don't change that, then it's all going to go bad. It's going to go even worse. And we know it's going to get worse because that's why the enhanced humans, they already played that reality. They already played that scenario, and they have come back to change that. And they're not intersecting. In the first run through, they were part of this reality field. In this second run through, because we've been relooped quite a lot of times, they have just put in clones to ensure their own purity rate so they can still implement that new type of sciences that will lead a portion of a reality field to exist after the humans of this composition and configuration. We're talking about the in-base program, humans and clones are gone. There will still be land to thrive on. There will still be portions of the planet left that are not being dragged into the machine wells. So that's the highway. Okay. And as I keep saying, well, we will join that for now because the original network, we are not there yet. And as long as we're in the 4th and the 5th, we might as well be on their highway. You can also go on your own highway, but most of the 4th are under the insectoids, I should know. Most of the 5th are under the new Atlantean parallel universal matrix, new Earth, 5D Earth. You can choose that if you like. And then there is the what we could say, the option of the enhanced humans, which are not to be trusted. They are all Nazi people. They are going with eugenics. And the eugenics, as go with Noah New Order of the Ages, is not about racial purity, as in skin color. It's about genetic purity. And they go with the genetic purity to modify the human genome to be able to exist along with these new reality fields that have been inserted into the northern hemisphere, these 5 layers I talked about that are following the latitude of from the North Pole and down. And Britain is part of that as well, and Denmark, and it kind of goes with Stonehenge. It's 5 rings down, and then that's kind of it. Canada is not part of it. Russia is not part of it. We could talk about some of the Scandinavian countries. Norway is part of it. Finland is not part of it. Sweden is grey transhuman, so not part of it either. So it's not clear that all the countries that are there are part of it, but it is a joint network that has been put in. And then there are the extensions into what we call portions. That's annoying. Portions of other fields inside this reality as well. For instance, Belgium, or portions of Switzerland, or what have you. Or Holland is grey, transhuman. So it's not clear cut that it goes with our understanding of aerial or areas, not aerial, but areas that are lodged into certain configurations. It's a checkerboard reality. You have got patches here and there that are connected to the big pattern. It's possible to do so, as I talked about, patterns of change across the holographic network. It can join in the same holographic network, but the nodal points and the situations around these nodal points are the configuration that will allow for a different pattern to exist within the joint network. And I talk more about that in the new reality program Sciences, where I really give it on the highest level of understanding of how this is possible with as much as is possible for me to say with human words, because most of it is visual and holographic and has no words to it. But we can only kind of, when we tap into it and see it, we understand it right away, because the information system in what we're connecting to will allow us to understand what we're dealing with if we have trained our brain to work on density and energies and are aligning our neural network with the holographic network, from where we will join the holographic network and become one. And that's also why we need to understand the sciences of the holographic network and the true realities. And we're here not talking about the progressive worlds. They work in the same way, but we are in the LPU and will remain in the LPU until we die. So that's it's just how it is. So that when I say now we begin talking about the true realities, I'm not talking progressive worlds. I know it's again confusing with the words, but what am I? So the humanoid realities, that's not what it is either. It's part of the original configuration of our solar system. So we could call the original realities, probably the right word, the original realities. However they look today and whoever's existing there. And that's the new thing that we need to begin to adapt to inside this reality, where this reality is doing its transition, where we will learn the relative reality dynamics by our everyday living. And that's part of the new way of living, that we live accordingly to the future human communities. And if you are selected to be part of these future human communities, you already have got the directives of them. I also put them into the new reality program directives, where on the Google side I'm explaining that, but it's part of the course material as well if I, for some reason, have to take down the Google side. But right now I've been asked to put it out there publicly and then do the course material as a kind of for the ones that will trade their knowledge to get there, showing interest by trading. Again, they are these future human races are protective of this information. It should not just be slandered out here and there, but there must be given crumbs of knowledge here and there so people can find the path and choose to go on it and then choose to invest in it. Because if you just search for something and you just look at it and then you just look through it as a kind of, oh yeah, use 5 minutes or however long people are looking at something, that's not investing. That is just sojourning and just traveling through, blasting through information as entertainment. And it has to be something you invest in because it works similarly as the path. You go through different steps that will teach you how to reconfigure your life, your everyday life, to exemplify the code systems of the future human communities. And with that, we'll end this video. And again, I am sorry about the coughing and all of these sounds, but I hope you will endure and we will continue in the next video. Thank you.